Welcome and thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests your questions using hashtag DisrupTV, and we will do our best to answer you live. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business and a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Review, ZDNet, and many publications. He's a sought-after keynote speaker, travels around the globe, and in my humble opinion, one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to episode 171 of DisrupTV.
Happy holidays, episode 171 with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar. He is one of the top follows on Twitter for CEOs, CIOs, and CMOs. He's a frequent guest on Bloomberg, BNN in Canada, and other TV shows, an author himself, but more importantly, he is a kind individual. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on in the world, and we've got some awesome guests as we get to our second to last episode for Disrupt TV for 2019. Who do we have for episode 171 to kick it off?
We are super fortunate. Speaking of awesome guests, our first guest is Jana Eggers, CEO of a neuroscience-inspired artificial intelligence platform company, Nara Logics. Jana brings over 25 years of technology and leadership experience to Nara Logics from companies like Intuit, Lycos, American Airlines, Los Alamos National Laboratory. Jana's been working on AI for 30 years. So apparently she started when she was 5, and several startups on her journey. She's a frequent speaker, writer, mentor to AI and startups. She's a marathon runner. In fact, this morning she ran a half a marathon. She's dialing in from Dubai. So it's midnight and we're so fortunate to have her with us. You can follow her work and incredible thought leadership on Twitter at Eggers, Jeggers. Welcome, Jana, to Disrupt TV.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm here with two of my favorite people. Vala asks the most amazing questions all the time, and seeds that inspiration throughout many other people. And Ray, I've known for many years, and I absolutely agree. He's one of the futurists, but And in addition to that, he just knows so much about what's actually going on in the industry. So he sees that future, but he brings it to where it is now and what to do about it now. So he's someone that I rely on regularly when I need to know, when I have a question about, I'm seeing this, I don't quite understand it, he can put it in its place.
Me too.
Boy, so kind, so kind. Hey, you've been a pioneer in the world of AI, and you've gone through many AI winters. And the reason I want to bring that perspective is we see booms and busts in technology. You've been riding, you've been surfing most of them. And I think really important is what's changed since the last boom? And is this one going to stick? Because it's looking good. And I think a lot of people are getting a little bit confident, but it sounds like it's being embedded in our lives. So let's start there. Where are we right now?
So I think what's most exciting to me. So the reason why I haven't been on all the highs and lows of AI is, for me, AI has just always been one of a tool that I could use. And I was fortunate because, in the early days, I started out at the lab and we had access to all the data and the compute power that we needed. And I never had to worry about, oh, is this enough or anything like that, because it was all there. And so that's really the key to what's happening now is the compute power obviously has grown, but it's also become more accessible. When I was out at the lab, for every few months, I'd have to write a proposal for being able to use the supercomputers and get permission, but I'd also have to pay several $1 million. And I calculated, this was a few years ago, I calculated, it was like, what I was paying a few $1 million for, it's about $500 for now. So that's pretty amazing when you consider, granted that was 30 years, but it's still pretty amazing what's happened there. And then the other thing is data, and the internet brought us all that data, and that's what researchers, and I wasn't someone researching AI. I always call myself an AI practitioner, not a researcher, because I just use it as a tool to solve my problems. So that's a very long-winded answer to say data and compute power are what's driven what's happening today. And what's key about that answer is to Ray, your question of, are we going to go through another winter? I highly doubt it. And the reason why is there's so much out there that people can continue make faster advances than we could before. So we're going to be able to do a better job of keeping up with expectations. And that's what would happen is people would get all hyped about AI, but then their expectations would be, never met. And I think with so many people working on it and doing the research, as well as people like me applying it and really seeing results, that's why we're not going to enter another, another space where AI is just people leave it and stop funding it and walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I often glance at Venture Scanner looking at the number of AI startups, and about 2,800 that fetched over 75 billion in funding in recent years. And that number continues to grow. Based on my estimate, we're going to cross 100 billion next year. So you have this incredibly awesome responsibility of guiding some of the biggest companies and some of the incredible successful startups in terms of how they can bring AI into production. How can they accelerate the digital transformation? What do these clients need to start? And then you said you're a problem solver. So what are these CEOs of these companies that you engage with? What are the problems they're trying to solve? Do they appreciate and fully understand the power of ML and the ability to really glean insights that they've never had before without use of AI?
So I'm going to give you the big secret to AI. It's all about chicken, eggs, and bacon. It's an easy way to remember it.
Chicken, eggs, and bacon. All right.
I'm hungry.
So this is what I tell CEOs, and they can remember this, right? As a CEO, that's not a slam on CEOs. It's like we all need things that we can remember quickly because we've got so much going on. So the chicken is your algorithm, the eggs are your data, and the bacon is your results. And that's what I call the trinity of AI. You can't separate those three things. You have to have all three. And most people think of AI as the chicken, the algorithm, but what CEOs really, you don't need to know. You need to ask some questions about your algorithm. Like, for example, is it transparent or not? Or can we get it to be transparent? And there's a lot going on in transparency, even in deep learning, which is the most black box. When I was out at Los Alamos, I had this challenge because I would have material scientists looking at me and saying, well, why is that the best? And I'm like, well, it just is. And so that's when I learned about sensitivity analysis and going into that to understand what the neural net was actually doing. And then the second thing is the data. And the one thing that I'd say about the data is people always think it's about a whole bunch of data, and it's really more, it's about the volume. And there's a lot of algorithms that are working now on needing less volume of data, but it's also important to have the variety in there. So as an example, with some of our customers, they have a lot of sensor data, so from IoT devices. So think of a factory. I have tons of sensor data now that's coming in from thousands of sensors that are around. But I also have maintenance reports, and the amount of data of the sensor stuff compared to the maintenance reports, those maintenance reports end up getting lost. So how do you have a system that balances both and can listen to a maintenance report at the same time as listening to, lots of data? And the way we talk about it, because we come from neuroscience, is it's when I have precedent and when I need to pull analogies, because analogies are what the brain uses when it doesn't have the exact precedent. I haven't seen this before, right? So that's the data part. And so I tell people, stop worrying about getting data from other places, focus on the data you have. It's just probably going to be a different perspective. And then the last thing, particularly for, CDOs, CMOs, CEOs, they need to really think about the results they're asking it for. And this is that law of unintended consequences, right? I may be optimizing for one thing, but I'm going to get another. Have we thought about those other things? What actually could go wrong? What could go right, but too far right? All of that you need to worry about. So just keep your chicken, eggs, and bacon in mind. and walk through those and talk with your team about it so you really understand what you have and what you need.
And how much of the bacon is new business model innovation opportunities where there's potential incremental revenue from new capabilities versus optimizing, automating, and efficiency and really migrating from legacy processes to more modern way of doing things?
See, this is why you ask the best questions.
I love bacon.
Exactly, bacon. There's a theme. Everybody's going to get in on the bacon theme later on too. But
awesome.
I always tell people to start with an optimization problem. And the reason why is most of the time they've already been trying to do some of that optimization. So they're more familiar with the data and they're more familiar with the problem or the results they're trying to drive. And I really think that's a great place to start. It's much harder to start with a new business model because there's so much that has nothing to do with the AI that you're trying to figure out, right? So you start with something you know better and start walking with AI. And then you can transition into, whoa, I'm not going to walk anymore. I'm going to jump on a hoverboard, which is that new business model. It's not even like what my walking, it's not going from walking to running. It's going from walking to something completely different. And you really should have some experience with that walking first.
And once in a while, that hoverboard might explode, but don't worry about that. You'll figure it out. So, but hey, let's talk about this. And let's just keep building on this. It's interesting. Like we are walking into that sentient future, right? It's one of our big things for our 10th anniversary for our Constellation Connected Enterprise 2020. You've been a frequent guest of the event. And in that sentient future, we've got to ask some questions, right? And if you understand those processes or those motions that you've been going through, then we can figure out these questions. And which is most of our clients are asking, hey, when do I fully automate? When do I augment with a human? And when do I use a human or apply a human to make those decisions? Do you have any advice for people around that?
Yeah, it's funny. We were just talking with one of our customers just this morning about exactly this because they're rolling into production. This is rolling into a plant manager situation. And they said, so one of the things about our platform is that we don't just say, this is the one answer. We give a range of options as far as what the answer may be. In this case, it's predicting quality. And they're very happy with the quality we're predicting. And in their case, we were saying, okay, do we give them 3 or 5 options? And then with those, how many, because we have transparency, how many why reasons, we call them why is this the right answer? And so we give the why reasons, and we're talking about, well, do we also give 3 or 5 why reasons? Which ones do we give? What's most important? And so I think that, from my experience everywhere from, like I said, the material scientists that I worked with, I worked in logistics, I've worked in search engines, how many results we give, 10 on the first page. It depends on your application and how much they're going to be able to research. And so, we as humans, options can confuse us sometimes.
Oh yeah. And
not having any also makes us angry. So it's a balance. And so my experience has been, it's going to be somewhere from 3 to 5, unless you have something that's easily scannable, like a search results page, right? Which is easily scannable. Did this headline meet mine or not? And so I would look at that when you say, how do we get started? Get started by giving them some explanation around what you're giving, which means options oftentimes, that some of the differentiation between those options. And then once they start saying, hey, this is, I don't want to see these when we're in this situation and the quality is running normal, I don't even want to see those. And that's kind of automated. The machine can fine tune the things that it needs to. But when it starts getting way out of whack, I want to see that. And I want to be the one that turns the big knobs, just not the little ones, because they're not that important. But when something starts going way off course, I need a human involved with that. That's what I've seen in several cases. Like I said, I worked in logistics and it was the same thing there. We started with a human would review everything and approve it. And we went to only 15% were reviewed by humans. But that was only usually after a couple of years of being in production, and it went it went on a slope of, you know, not sure, not sure, not sure. Then all of a sudden it was like, I'm tired of looking at these. They're always right.
You actually triggered something here. That's the interesting thing. When we get to voice and voice assistants, I don't think we can get to 3 search results. You're like, it's like waiting for like IVR from hell, right? So you might not even get to 2, right? So this is gonna be very interesting to see the choices. And I wonder how much is other, where you're putting back, you know, training data back into the system. So like, nope, none of these.
I love that point too, which is you got to have feedback. If you don't have feedback, people quickly lose faith. And even the ability, not just feedback as in all 3 of these were wrong, but just like that one I know is wrong and I know it's wrong for this reason.
Yes.
You know, the sensor is out, for example, and the machine's not taking into account. And that ability to go in and say, you know, if I ignored that sensor, what are the new results? Churn through again and tell me what the new results are.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so you earlier talked about, you know, transparency, explainability.
Oops, I lost Vala. Ray, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I lost Vala a little bit. I think Vala, if he comes through, go again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Let's go.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we talked about transparency and explainability. So my question is, how much time do you spend with your clients assessing their core values, guiding principles, the health of their culture? Because this ethical and humane use of technology is going to become more and more of a priority, boardroom priority, in my opinion, not just CEO. So as we continue to automate and rely on algorithms, the chicken, the egg, the bacon, all of that, it needs to, you know, it needs to make sure that, you know, when you consume all of that, you're healthy. So ethical and humane use of technology, how much of your time is spent really coaching CEOs and your clients to understand the importance of not drifting away from your brand promise by, you know, relying on this incredibly advanced emerging technology like machine learning, as an example?
It's a place I spend a lot of time on in general for, you know, executive level education, because they are often used to, if they're not nerds, you know, I'm a nerd, so I pay attention to all of this. If they're not nerds, they're used to trusting their technology people, and they definitely should trust their technology people. This isn't about that. It's just that, again, you know, the tech is the chicken, but I have the eggs and bacon, and they have a big impact on the eggs and bacon, and they need to understand that more. And so I spend a lot of time explaining to them and giving them a lot of examples of this went wrong because of the data, this went wrong because of the results, and giving them those examples. And they're like, whoa, now I get it. So give them examples, which helps a lot. But the biggest thing, you know, where we start with all of our customers is the results have to be better. So no one cares about the transparency and the ethics if the results aren't better. So I'm never going to implement it. So we absolutely always start, number one, without any doubt, can this give you a better result than where you are now? Then it goes into the transparency. And what's great for me is the transparency actually helps answer some of those ethics questions as to what's being used, how is it being used, what does it look like? Is that really a decision that we want to make based on that data? So we benefit from, we already have the second question answered.
Right. And then the question is, people don't want the black box, but they only care about the black box if they don't agree with the answers. So it's actually very interesting to watch where they're trying to get to the fine tuning. Two questions I'm going to get to. We're almost out of time in a sense, but where are we on AI ethics? Are we getting anywhere better there? And then I want to talk about the tech scene in Boston. So let's hit those if we can get it.
Yeah. So just really quickly, I think people are talking about it more. I do worry that it's going a bit the same way as diversity has gone, which is we've all seen that we get the diversity training and it actually makes us think, oh, check, I've gotten it, and it makes it worse, right? And so I do think we need to challenge ourselves a bit more on that, but there's some amazing people that are working on it. And so I think we'll get through it, but I do worry. That's the big worry that I have, that we're just checking boxes and we don't understand the impact. And
right.
Then,
we get policies that have like weird ramifications 10 years from now where like, I was sitting, but go ahead. Yeah, keep going. And then Boston.
No. I mean, you're exactly it, that we're not thinking through the big impact and what did we really get from the ethics training that we're doing. And I think so much of it we just don't know, because there's so much hidden in the data that we've never looked at that we're still trying to understand.
Got it. Okay. And texting in
Boston, it's the best. So
I thought Vala would appreciate that.
I agree. I totally agree.
I mean, why would you go anywhere else? It's like, look at all the schools we have. It's, I'm biased because this is my 7th startup and 5 of them have been with MIT people. And so I'm, and Lycos was Carnegie Mellon. So, it wasn't Boston, but it was fed by a lot of Bostonian influence. And we don't have any problem recruiting people. The people that want to be in Boston stay there. And so, and there's tons of great people that come there for school and never want to leave.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. We are with Jana Eggers. So you were talking to one of the smartest people in applied AI, and she's the CEO at Nara Logics. You can follow her on Twitter at JEGGERS. And then we're going to talk about another country that maybe you want to create a startup next. All right. Thanks a lot for being on the show, Jana.
Thank you, guys. Y'all are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Enjoy Dubai.
Enjoy safe travels.
Thank you.
One of the smartest CEOs, you're right. And she's super accessible, and she's an educator. So I've watched her speak at several conferences, and she's amazing. And so again, speaking of amazing guests, our next guest is Ott Vatter, the managing director of the first government startup focusing on e-Residency. Ott took up the mantle of managing director this year in 2019, having previously held the position of deputy director. He was responsible for scaling up the e-Residency program through strategic partnerships and product development from 2015 to present day. He speaks around the world at some of the most high-profile events, including alongside the president of Estonia, about how digital initiatives like e-Residency can pave the way for stronger economic and social relations worldwide. You can follow his work on Twitter at OttVatter. Welcome, Ott, to DisrupTV.
What's up, guys? Great to be here.
Hey, we are so excited to have you here. We were graced by your former Prime Minister President, Thomas Hendrik, when he was at our event celebrating the 70th anniversary of human rights, as well as the 50% of the world being connected to the internet. And we had a little bit of a taste of what was going on, but let's talk about e-Residency and why did Estonia pioneer this?
So you have to understand that Estonia is a super small country compared to the US. We're 1.3 million. Our history hasn't been too kind to us. We don't have too much natural resources. So after the Soviet Union collapsed, we had to kind of stand out somehow. And IT was one of the ways that we had the education, we had the kind of knowledge, and we pioneered some great decisions. We put cable connection to public schools in a very early stage in 1990s. And that kind of pioneered this wave of developers who actually made Kazaa, made Skype, and now they have kind of prolonged their effect to the startup scene. And e-Residency is kind of extension of this hardware, in the sense that we have had an ID card in Estonia for nearly 16 years. It's very simple. It's a plastic document with a photo on it and a chip on it. And e-Residency is kind of the extension of this card to non-citizens. So we use this card ourselves daily. We can't imagine our life without it. It's kind of our key to our society. If we lose the key, we're in a very bad situation. So e-Residency was something to give to others, not only citizens, so that they could also partake in our digital society.
So that's amazing.
In the spirit of, so it's in the spirit of decentralization and mobility of people, decentralization of companies, removing borders, and really giving access using technology. And so how big is the e-Residency program? How old is it? How big is it? And, you know, how many e-residents are there, for example?
So we're celebrating our 5th year. So it's the interview itself or video that we're having is in a very appropriate time horizon, because 1st of December was our 5th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
And thank you. We have currently over 60,000 e-residents, so 63,236 to be very exact. And these guys have created more than 10,000 companies to Estonia.
10,000 companies. 10,000 companies. That's amazing.
Company.
Wow. And that's actually interesting, right? I mean, a lot of these companies have been, yeah, and a lot of these companies have been, you've got some great startups that have come along the way, from ComSkill to Pipedrive to Taxify, things like TransferWise. I mean, some very interesting companies all across the landscape in different industries. As you think about that and the benefits that actually come in, why are people coming into the e-residency program? Is there something about being an e-resident that's different, especially from the countries that they're coming from? I mean, what are they missing, and what's some of the interest there?
I think what we're seeing is that like companies, like actual competitors and apps, we are competing for our clients. The same is happening with governments. The same is happening with countries. We are competing for the best citizens. And if a country can't actually offer the best services, or the environment is not the best, then the people want to move, because we have so many opportunities to actually partake in different services and different kind of environments. So if I want to live in another place that has a more favorable climate, I will move there. If there's some country that actually offers me a way to create a company in 20 minutes, do it from the comfort of my home. If I'm an entrepreneur and I value my time, that's the way I want to go.
This is amazing. It all started with Edward Lucas. I mean, he was one of the senior editors of The Economist. He was actually your first e-resident? So.
Correct. First one, and then actually Tim Draper and Steve Jurvetson were followed.
Wow.
Not a bad list there.
Wow.
Absolutely not.
So our previous guest right before you was dialing in from Dubai. My understanding is Dubai has announced an e-residency program. Lithuania is also planning to launch an e-residency program. 5 years into this journey, did you expect more countries would follow Estonia's footsteps in terms of e-residency, and what can you say about growing interest outside of Estonia to adopt your innovation and your program?
The interest is definitely there, and I believe that there are probably about 5 countries that we know nothing about currently. So Dubai and Lithuania have been the ones, openly coming up with this kind of concept. But we definitely see a lot of interest, and we do help the other governments as well. And it's not in its concept, it's not anything new that you could create a company using a power of attorney or physically fly somewhere to create a company. But what we did differently was to put a digital identity, attach a kind of virtual verification to the process, which means that you can do it from anywhere in the world. The only thing that we require is that you guys actually, when you apply, after you get accepted, you come to our embassy. So we actually verify you physically. There is one face-to-face meeting, because it's the highest form of security of a national document. It's not just a piece of plastic. It's something similar to a passport that is issued by the Estonian government. So we need to meet you once, and then you get the card, and then you can actually access our digital platforms.
Right, and what people don't realize is it's not an actual residency, right? I mean, you can't stay in Estonia with the e-residency, correct?
Yes, you can travel, you can vote, and you won't become an actual resident of Estonia. Yes.
Got it. And it doesn't, you don't avoid paying taxes in your actual country. You still have to do that, correct?
Absolutely. There's 2 different things. You're a personal tax resident of US no matter what. But when you
create they track us down everywhere. They know exactly where we are. We have more IRS agents than I think in some countries' militaries.
But the difference is that when you create a company to Estonia, that company is automatically a tax resident of Estonia. But when you create your value somewhere else, the rule generally is where you create your value, you should pay your tax. So it's definitely no tax haven program, but it's a virtual identity to make your entrepreneurial life easier.
True, and it's also not a citizenship, just for people to recognize as well, right? You're
Absolutely
not going to
not.
get consular support from the Estonian government, right? So
To actually be a citizen of Estonia, you have to learn the Estonian language, which has 14 tenses, so it will take a while.
and it's not a travel document either, right? I can't use this to travel with and be like my visa, right, or something like that.
That's different with Estonian. So we have a photo on the card, so we can travel inside EU with the card. But e-residence, it's only virtual.
Only virtual.
Only virtual.
Cool. Yeah, I was just say hit some of the myths that people always ask. So I figured
that clarification is important. What surprised you most in this 5-year journey? I mean, did you expect 10,000 companies to be established in such a short amount of time? You know, what are some of the lessons learned, and perhaps the biggest surprise now that you're a managing director of the program?
The beginning stage of the program was that we had, subsidiaries or daughter companies of big, EU companies, conglomerates in the Baltics or Estonia. And we thought that we'll make the life of, the board members, foreign board members, simple. We'll give them something that they can actually sign documents digitally, meaning they wouldn't have to fly to Estonia, for example. But when we soon discovered through development was that there were actually so many more people who were interested in having a company in EU that they could manage remotely, plus signing documents digitally. So we're actually giving a lot of people who didn't have the capacity to be entrepreneurs, the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. And what we didn't see was more conservative countries like Germany, France, who actually have very rigid systems of creating companies, which take a lot of time and a lot of money. So for them, this would be a simple way to actually conduct business. And then a third wave would be the digital nomads of the world, who actually are never in one place. So they don't want to go to the IRS to fill, tax reform like this, a bunch of papers and sit in a queue for 3 hours. So these people can do everything online. I think the biggest surprise was how many people actually have this problem in the world.
It is. I mean, there's so much bureaucracy, red tape, and regulation to set up companies around the world. I mean, I think that's one of the things that Draper was talking about, the fact that they can help you. I mean, this was just a quicker way to actually get something up and running and actually be part of that entrepreneurial spirit. So, I mean, look, what's the benefit to Estonia? What happened? I mean, were you able to build out the tax base? I mean, able to attract more people into Estonia? I mean, you wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't this successful.
So the core underlying benefit for us was that we had the infrastructure in place. We didn't have to invent anything new. So we kind of removed the photo from here and made it available for foreigners. So it was a no-brainer for us. But what was surprising was that actually the soft power aspect of this program, people who wanted to be e-residents, not because they wanted to create companies or they had a need for it, but they wanted to stay in touch with Estonia. They saw that there was so much digital innovation happening that they wanted to be a part of it somehow. And this is also a security guarantee for Estonia, who has a big hairy neighbor. And in case something should go wrong, this is early adopters, 60,000 people who are very, very voiceful in the web. So the benefits are there. There are tax benefits, there are economical benefits, but I think surprising facts are the soft power and the security guarantee.
Can you share some of your most famous e-residents? And a follow-up question, give us insight in terms of the future roadmap. What are you looking to in terms of enhanced services and capabilities to the existing program?
I believe the most famous e-residents are, of course, politicians, Angela Merkel, Shinzo Abe. Wow. We have the Pope, who is an e-resident. We have Bill Gates. Bill Gates is an e-resident. Oh, wow. So there are a lot of famous people, but probably, disclaimer.
It's better than an Amex Centurion card here, Why get an Amex Black card? Get an e-resident card, You're
exchange off. Now. But probably they don't use it to run a company in Estonia. That's what we openly say. But it's cool having them a part of the program.
Hey, for 100 euros for 5 years, it's a good deal. So
it is, right?
I can't imagine when like Bill Gates' application comes through the wire. You guys, that's
Can you come and verify that's really Bill Gates? I mean, they had to actually go in and to get their pictures taken. Think about it.
So full disclaimer: our prime minister actually met Bill and gave him the card personally, because it has to be the representative of the government, and
Oh, sure.
prime minister is quite good at.
That's amazing.
So regarding the roadmap, where it can go, I think I mentioned before that governments are going to compete for citizens anyway. And for us, it has been easier because we're a small country. We came out of the occupation of the Soviet Union, so we had nothing, and we've come this far. So I think next steps for e-residents will actually be residency. So people who will migrate to our country, because we have a very simple tax system. We have a startup ecosystem that is really booming at the moment. You mentioned some of the companies coming out of the country. So we would like to actually get these people to come to Estonia physically. They don't have at the moment. It's very dark and not that nice. For example, the sun. So we have a few more innovations coming up.
Great. We need to do a DisrupTV in Estonia. We need to.
We do.
Make it happen next year. Just
we'll do a trip to.
I would be happy to host you guys.
We'll do a trip to Davos, and then we'll head over to Estonia afterwards. That'll be the way to make this happen. Hey, so it is a good question about what's next, right? I mean, you guys have been basically a public digital disruptor, right? And when you think about this, not only in the tax base, what are other innovative services, right? Because you look around the world, I mean, government services aren't necessarily known as the best, the most efficient, the most, citizen-friendly, business-friendly. What are things that you've been hearing from other e-residents that say, we wish you could do this? So.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a lot of things that e-residents would like us to do. They would actually like us to have a minister for e-residents that would represent themselves, or they would have a parliamentary, representation actually that would represent e-residents. Because currently we have 60K e-residents. We have 1.3 million people. Let's imagine that we have 600K e-residents and 1.3 million people. Should the voices of e-residents be heard?
Wow.
And watch what are the consequences of this, because these people are not actually living in Estonia. So there are a lot of interesting kind of ethical questions to this, and how the world is going to play out. In terms of technical innovation, of course, we have a principle called data once. So once you actually get the data, we shouldn't ask it again. So we have it in our country. We know who you are. We know what you do. So we shouldn't, give you a bunch of papers and ask for your name and your birth date every year for every application. That's something that we're working on currently.
Now, how do citizens feel about that, right? I mean, because like you've got true citizens, and then you got the e-residents folks. I mean, are they worried that, do they want to see more e-residents become citizens, or are they worried about e-residents in general?
So currently, actually, there are more e-residents applying for e-residency weekly and monthly than there are actually birth rate of Estonian citizens, which is a very interesting concept. That being said, main portion of e-residents still are not here physically. So probably they shouldn't have that kind of rights and this kind of representation, because they are virtual users of our platforms.
Are you getting more people to speak the Estonian language as well?
We're trying, but it's a very difficult language.
It's a hard language, actually.
So my last question to you is, is there one thought that you would like to leave with our listeners today? Perhaps you're pitching to entrepreneurs that are listening, and you want to inspire them to think about not only becoming e-residents, but potentially thinking about, having their business in Estonia.
If you're tired of filling in physical papers and actually waiting in line, and you have multiple customers all around the world, so check out Estonia. It might be a useful place for you, and come here physically as well during summertime, mostly, and check out what we have here.
That's great. That's terrific.
Well, hey, Aita, I think that's how you say it in Estonian.
Perfect.
Aita, and thank you for being on the show. We are here live with one of the pioneers in terms of digital governments and the e-residency program. and we are here with Ott Vatter, and you can follow him on Twitter at OttVatter, Ott Vatter, the managing director at e-Residency for Estonia. So sign up now and get checking on the benefits. Thanks a lot for being on the show, Ott.
Thank you, Ott.
Thanks for being on very late from Tallinn.
Thank you. Thanks.
Don't worry. Thanks, Brad.
62,000 e-residents in 5 years, including the Pope. That's pretty awesome.
I bet you our next guest has an e-residency at Estonia, given how worldly he is.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if our next guest has e-residency.
But we'll have to check it out. We'll have to see if he does. So.
It's our privilege to have one of our favorite guests coming back to Disrupt TV. Byron Reese is the CEO and publisher of the technology research company Gigaom, which all of us know, and the founder of several high-tech companies. Byron has obtained or has pending patents in disciplines as varied as crowdsourcing, content creation, and psychographics. The websites that he has launched, which covers the intersection of technology, business, science, and history, have together received over 1 billion visitors. Certainly Ray, myself, and almost all of our guests would be part of that billion population. Byron is the author of an acclaimed book, Infinite Progress, and his newest book, The Fourth Age, Smart Robots, Conscious Computers, and the Future of Humanity. He's a terrific follow on Twitter at BYRONREESE. Welcome back, Byron, to Disrupt TV.
Hey, so good to be here again, guys.
Hey, thanks a lot for being here. And, this is your 5th appearance. You came in on January 2017. We've been hearing a lot about what's going on, and we want to hear more about your predictions that you have coming in. And I think one of them is interesting here, really about what we want to do with this interesting technology and what we have the people to actually do is going to be interesting, given the talent and the resources. So let's talk about that first prediction. But while we're doing that, let's check in on you're cooking up something good in the oven. What was going on there?
Well, I tried making candy pork belly, but it didn't come out. It was my first time to try it. I thought, the holidays are coming. What's the most opulent thing I can make? And I got to go back to the drawing board.
Well, if there was a sentient AI kitchen, would they be able to solve this gap between what we want to do with AI and what we have the people actually do?
I'm up for it.
But hey, let's talk about that first prediction, seriously. And that's a very interesting one that you have here. The gap between what we want to do with AI and what we have the people to do will widen, not shrink, even though more people can use the technology. And we have all these dystopian views of like, AI is going to kill us, AI is going to take away our jobs, and you're saying something different here. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that that as we kind of get accustomed to being in a world where we understand this technology better, you can look around your enterprise and come up with any number of things that would be great projects. And the list of projects that we can do now is vastly more than the people we have. Even though, more and more people are learning to use these tools, the toolkits are getting much easier. Tons and tons of people are kind of being onboarded with being able to use the technology. Just the window of the amount of opportunity available is just going big, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to do it all. Like, if you say what human activities can benefit by studying data and making projections, it's almost everything, and we just don't have enough people to do it all.
So I believe you crossed your 100th episode, a podcast specifically targeting some of the best and brightest artificial intelligence practitioners and authors and researchers. Do they agree with you? Is the majority of the 100 experts you've talked to regarding AI, do they agree that there'll be more new jobs created by AI and it will dwarf job losses, and that the opportunity is really a positive one looking forward?
Well, opinion is split on that question. So I'll tell you 3 things that I asked them all. The first one is, do you believe we can create general intelligence? And so general intelligence is like, the AIs you see in the movies. It's as smart and versatile as a human. And I ask all 100, do you think we can create general intelligence? And 95 of them say yes, which is really interesting because it's a technology we don't know how to do. And the reason 95 people say yes is because they have one single assumption, and that assumption is that people are machines. And if you start with the assumption that people are machines, your brain is a machine, then someday we'll build a mechanical you. And that's the whole basis for the belief that we can build general intelligence. The interesting thing is when I put that question on my website, only 15% of the general public believe they're machines. And so it's this huge disconnect. And then the second question I ask them is, what is AI? And I've never gotten the same answer twice, because we don't all agree on what intelligence is. Nobody knows what it really is. It's quite a contentious issue among people in that world. Like, there were probably some awkward Thanksgiving dinners if that topic came up. What exactly is intelligence? And then the final question I ask them is that one. Are we gonna have a shortage of humans brought about by all of this opportunity, or are the humans going to, you know, be outsourced by the AI? And I would say that people are split on that. I will say, generally speaking, the closer you are to writing code, the harder you know how it is to do anything, and the less likely you believe that we're going to have huge job loss. I'm squarely in the camp that says it's kind of impossible that we're going to lose jobs over this, net jobs. In fact, I always pull both of them out and give them a full airing, but probably my bias on that question always pokes through because I don't think it's possible.
I'm amazed that you spoke to 100 leading experts around the world and you have 100 different definitions. That's
yeah. Because there's two wrinkles. There's what is intelligence, and then there's why is artificial intelligence artificial? Because it could be artificial in the sense that we made it the way but it could also be artificial in the sense that it's just faking it. Like artificial turf isn't really grass, it just looks like it. And so there's not even agreement on whether AI is intelligent, mimics intelligence, or if there's no difference between those two things.
You know, those are deep fundamental questions. And let's go through your predictions. You've got 5, and let's lay them all out actually. So everybody has context as to what you're talking about here. So
what are the other ones?
The new jobs created by AI will dwarf job losses by it. So
absolutely. So I would make that case the following way, and that is the big question on everybody's mind. I would say 2 things about it. If you went back in time 25 years to when the internet became popular and you said, what's this going to do to jobs? You would say, well, it's going to put all the taxi drivers, it's going to put all the travel agents out of work. It's going to put the stockbrokers out of work. It's going to put the yellow pages out of work. It's going to put the newspapers out of work. And you would have been right about every single one of them. But you would have missed Uber, Etsy, eBay, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter, because we can only see what it will destroy, but we don't have the imagination to imagine what it's going to create. And so that's what it is with AI. What the internet did is it lowered the cost of moving data to zero and the cost of performing operations on data to zero. And when you lower the cost of something to zero, people use more of it, and then they think of all these things to do with it. With AI, you're kind of reducing the cost of cognition to zero. And then you say, well, if that's free, what can I do now? And the answer is you can do kind of anything. And I don't think it's a technology that only helps those at the top kind of the employment ladder. Anybody holding a device that's AI enabled becomes as smart as that device. And then people often also say, isn't it the case that the job loss is a lot of low-skilled jobs and that those people don't have the skills to do the jobs? And that's a fundamental misunderstanding of kind of how it all works. What happens is technology creates new jobs kind of at the top, and they're backfilled by people really close to there, and then those jobs are backfilled, and then those jobs are backfilled all the way down the line. The question really boils down to, can everybody do a job a little harder than the one they have? And I think the answer to that is yes. And that's why in this country, last sentence I'll say, that's why we've had 250 years of full employment and rising wages and technological,
That answer is yes, but I'm getting worried that we've got politicians and policymakers that are entering policies of scarcity as opposed to policies of abundance, right? They're thinking in very, very different terms. And we've got a tough job educating folks that, these are abundance. It's not about scarcity. It's about opportunity. It's not about, fear. And I think we're entering a very dangerous time. What do you think about that?
I don't worry too much about politics because it doesn't ever lead. Well, I shouldn't say ever. It doesn't usually lead in these kinds of things. Politicians try to see where the crowd is running, and then they get in front of that and they keep running and, follow me. But it's like, this is a juggernaut that is going.
Yeah.
And people who don't understand AI, don't understand
But we got regulations, right? We got weird regulations that are going to pop up with unintended consequences, which we were talking about a little bit earlier in the show.
Yeah. Would you say that's happened with the internet or not?
Less so than in other areas, but less so in the US and the Western world, but we're starting to see nationalism pop in where people are trying to protect their internets, and China's exporting their version of the internet, which means every dictator can now be in control, right? I mean, it's a very different kind of approach. So that's what I'm more worried about.
That is frightening. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Byron, should we be thinking about the relationship of an employee and company? When I think about, my son is 9. By the time he's eligible for getting a driver's license, it's possible that you will have great advancements in terms of autonomous vehicles. My relationship with the car today is I'm the driver. I drive the vehicle to go from A to B. When my son is in a car 10 years from now, the relationship may be that he's a traveler. It's the car that's driving him. So the relationship between man and machine, as you outsource the sense and response and thinking away from the person and to a system or machine, changes the relationship. And in this case, a traveler will have more free time to do things, be creative, do work, whatever they want to choose to do. Now, as enterprise becomes autonomous, not just, your calendar is now very smart, your email, the texts are suggested to you, virtual assistants, more and more, the advancements we see in a vehicle will be advancements we see in terms of a future of autonomous business. And now, how does that change the relationship where you're not driving the business is driving you because of advanced software applications that will guide sales, service, marketing, and all these different lines of business and that will be impacted by AI. Should we be thinking about, what is there left for a person to do in an autonomous enterprise, and how does the relationship change between the stakeholder and the business?
Well, that is all. Those are all very good questions, and with regard to autonomous cars and vehicle, I don't know that it was ever a great idea to let a 16-year-old drive 4,000 pounds of metal down the road.
I agree with you 1,000%.
I've got that problem coming up in a few weeks.
Sure, not one that, if we invented self-driving cars at the very beginning, people would say, rip that out, put a person back there. They're far more reliable. But, you ask very good questions, but I try to look at these. I have a very simple way of looking at this, which is, these technologies all increase human productivity, and they simply do that. And that is always good, always good. You cannot find a bad case for it. If you think it's bad, then, we should pass laws that people have to work with one arm tied behind their back or with one eye closed or intoxicated or so. We should lower everybody's, but we don't want to. All of these technologies you're talking about.
Some countries are doing that. So.
I've seen that. That. No, it's true, but you have to say, is that the juggernaut of the future? Is that what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. What we have seen is that for 250 years, we've developed technology that increases human productivity, and that's always been good for everybody. Yeah. And this technology,
except for performance-enhancing drugs. So
fair enough. Over the long term, and the same thing with AI. It increases productivity, and that is always good. So. And I also go to bed at night knowing that when this world emerges, there'll be a million smart guys like you two staying up every night saying, how can I use this new technology to do great new things? And things we can't imagine, like ways, so many of these questions we ask are going to seem so provincial in the future.
Absolutely.
Because in retrospect, it always seems obvious.
Absolutely.
Like Uber seems obvious, eBay seems obvious, but in 90 whatever, it wasn't. It was like, wow, I can sell this stuff in my attic. I can just I can get on the car with a stranger.
Unbelievable.
Hey, my medallion was worth 1.2 million. Now it's worth like 250,000.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a different issue, of
wonder
course.
if, university degrees are going to be viewed as medallions 20 years.
You think that? I don't. I would defend the university degree in the future. The universities are a 12th century French invention that hasn't changed in 900 years, frankly. And so you have to say, well, why is it that through the Black Death and the Protestant Reformation and world wars of fascism, communism, and all the rest, it never changes? And so I think it must be doing something useful, even if it's not apparent to us what it is.
But Byron, we should do a coffee talk series, like you, me, and Vala, like, and go on the road in every city and just do breakfast and have these kind of conversations.
As my 17-year-old daughter is looking at options, she looked at, so far, I think 10 schools, and the average tuition across these 10 institutions are around $73,000 per year for undergrad. I don't know how you
Let's give her $250,000 for a startup and see how she does. See which one's better.
I just think the trajectory and it's not a great product. You're not finishing on time. You don't necessarily have the skills to be productive right after.
And so all of that is true, though. I mean, I would turn it around and say, okay, they do a poor job. They're not entrepreneurial. They're not good business people. And yet for 900 years,
I know.
They have endured every single thing. The bubonic plague. And, I mean, everything.
What's the bubonic plague when you've got a college admissions scandal?
The question is, now all of us have a supercomputer in our pocket. Can we say that in terms of access to information and insights, do you?
Well, I used to think that. I used to think the problem was people didn't have access to information. Everybody has access to information. That turns out that was not the problem. I mean, there's still people who think the world's flat. And so it is.
The problem is still the people, is what you're saying.
It's got to be something more than access to information. That fundamentally, that's an entrepreneur view of an education, that it's like a database you're trying to fill up. But evidently, it does something very different. And I don't pretend to understand it. I just look at it and say, that's not going away. If 900 years it survived all that, it's not even going to change. It's not even going to change.
Well, hey, let me hit the.
Still, like, wear robes in graduation and have diplomas printed in Latin on vellum. I mean, these are not highly adaptive organizations.
No, it's true. You're right.
Well, hey, let's hit your other ones. Your other predictions were general intelligence will not get any closer. We touched that. Efforts to use AI to spot fake news will probably fail. Let's go deeper on that one. And the number of things that we think of as AI will shrink as the technology becomes more commonplace. We talked about it. Let's talk about AI spotting fake news will probably fail, because that's the hot topic at this moment, about deep fakes and using AI to combat deep fakes.
I mean, 5 years ago, I started a company called Knowingly to solve, I thought, the biggest problem on the web, which is you don't know what to believe or what not to believe. And this was before the term fake news even was invented. It was nothing. I just knew that you can read something online and not know if it's true or not. And I was like, that's the biggest problem on the internet. I'm going to solve it. And it turns out that while there is a truth in an abstract sense, there are, 2 + 2 is 4. We can all agree on that. But does lowering taxes boost the economy? Does regulation of X affect Y? It turns out that so many things in our world are such complex systems that cause and effect within them. It's very hard to discern. Yeah. And so most statements live in a gray area between truth and lies. And I've racked my head against solving that, because I would love to be able to highlight a sentence and have it be true or false. Like that's what we want. And then if it's true, I can click on it and I can see all the citations on it. I can find dissenting views by just clicking on it, but we don't have that. We unfortunately, we came on the internet and we said, let's get rid of the gatekeepers. That's good because it democratizes everything. And boy, it was good. We used to have, you had your choice of any 3 news channels any 3 news shows you wanted to watch at 5 o'clock. Like, you got to choose which of those 3 you watched. Now you got a million of them. But so we lowered and I'm all for lowering the gatekeepers. I agree. But unfortunately, the cacophony came out, and the ability to tell the difference between truth and untruth vanished. I hope someday there's a flight back to brands, a voluntary flight back to brands, that I will pay for a trusted news source because I can trust it, and I will pay for it. Because right now, truth doesn't necessarily pay any better than lies, and that's the problem. It may even pay worse. Lies spread around, they're very enticing and viral, and truth is oftentimes very boring. And so I hope at some point we all sicken of it enough that we're saying, I'll pay $6 to read something I can believe, and not have to just ask myself, well, who put this out there and why, and what's their agenda and all of that.
Well, maybe the answer is making sure that we use AI to help people do critical analysis, and then they can come up with their opinion. And at that point, because maybe there are no trusted news sources or trusted sources anymore. And you hope the AI is also not tainted and trusted. The irony behind that.
I mean, I still get people who send me links that are in Snopes. You can type whatever the thing is, space Snopes, and it's the first result. 15 seconds of work, you can debunk the craziest things, and yet people don't. And so why do you think
I'm still filling up my gas with my cell phone on? People don't seem to like that, but hey.
Yeah. You light
We
up.
are here. I'll give you the last word. So go ahead, Byron.
No, I'm good. I mean, we focused on some negative things, but I'm a techno-optimist. I believe that we're on a pathway as a species. We've always had too little of everything. We've always had too little food, too little medicine, too little education, and that technology is a way to overcome scarcity, like you said. And the future we await will be one of abundance, like you said. And so I just think it's, sometimes bumpy to get there.
I agree.
We are here with Byron Reese, one of the smartest folks looking into the future, written a book on AI, CEO and publisher and author at Gigaom. We need to do a breakfast series with you, me, and Val at some point. And thank you so much for being on the show. And today's theme is bacon. So we'll go there later at some other point. Thanks a lot. Happy Friday, Byron.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to come back, guys. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Hey, anytime.
The fastest 20 minutes we have on this show ever is when we have Byron on. He's just brilliant.
We're in quantum speed here. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. Was he here? Was he not? I mean, that was fast.
Honestly, it's amazing how smart he is and well-spoken. Okay, so next week is our final show of 2019. So we will end with episode 172. We have, it's funny, I have evangelist in my title, but he was the original evangelist. We have Guy Kawasaki, chief evangelist at Canva, and one of our favorites who's going to be on the show. We have Joanne Moretti, who's the founder CEO of J-Curve Digital, former CMO at Dell, former CMO at Jabil, one of the brightest people that Ray and I know, and an extraordinary person. Dave Evans, co-founder and CEO of, what is it? Fictive. Yes.
So.
And Liz Miller, Vice President, Principal Analyst at Constellation, another incredible CMO, analyst, researcher, and digital transformation expert. We'll do Ray and I will do a year-end recap. We'll be back Friday, January 10th. So we're going to have, obviously Christmas, New Year's, and we'll be back January 10th. While we're off air, we encourage you to, check out SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Vimeo. We're broadcast across a couple dozen radio stations. So there's plenty of DisrupTV content with nearly 400 unique guests that have been on our show that you can connect with and learn from. So it's
we got to do some AM radio to FM radio promos at some point, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and we'll reflect during the time, Ray and I, in terms of how we can improve the show. We welcome you to recommend guests. Go to DisrupTV show, connect with our world-class producer Aubrey, and recommend guests, and we'll do our best to get them on the show. So
if you're a CEO, startup founder, VC, if you're doing something interesting, author, book, let us know, and definitely reach out to our Disrupt TV show handle on Twitter, or you can write to Vala and myself. So thanks a lot, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy holidays.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.